Okay, hi everyone. It's very good to see you in person. So we might have some technical difficulties because the HDMI switch that sort of manages like video recording and projection and everything decided to die yesterday evening. And so things are not completely optimal now, but for you, it should be fine. You know, it's more for the people who might actually see us online that it's going to be a problem. But as far as I can tell, I think no one is actually online. So I guess that is good. Perfect. So thanks for submitting your assignments. If we have time at the end of today's class, we will have a look at some of them, you know, just to sort of, you guys did a very good job, by the way. Like, I mean, I haven't seen all of them, you know, like, but like, some of them were really cool, actually. So if we have time, we can sort of, you know, have a look at them, you know, and see what you guys actually did. So today I brought you presents, as you can tell, and so you guys are going to get your lab kits, and we are going to talk about lab kits, and we're going to try to program the Teensy to actually get some audio processing going on. Okay, so first step is birthday, Christmas, New Year, whatever. Mike, do you want one? I guess Mike, you can have one. Okay, well, there you go. Cool. Well, there you go. Oh yeah, perfect. Just gonna move those here for now. Oh, hi, welcome. I mean, you guys can actually seat in the classroom. You know, like that's okay. Like I don't think there is any like rule in terms of having like one person every other chair. So if you want to seat on any of the chairs that are like free, you can do it. That's okay. Or unless you're afraid, you know, and in that case you can, of course, be in the back. But there we go. Okay, so first we're gonna have a look at what's in the actual kit. So it is possible that I forgot something. Okay, so if you don't have one of the items that I'm going to talk about now, feel free to complain, and we can figure that out at the end of today's class. Okay. Cool. So you should all have headphones. Okay, and you don't have all the same headphones. Okay, so but they're bad anyway, okay? So that's their defining component. They're cheap headphones, right? Like so you don't have headphones, you know, like and the reason why we're giving you headphones is because you know like most people now have Bluetooth headphones and they don't have a wire, and so if you actually want to connect them to the Teensy, it's potentially a problem. So you want to be able to hear what's gonna come out of the Teensy, okay? So you should have headphones. Then you should have a little bag that looks like this. And in this little bag, you're going to have the Teensy 4.0. You're going to have the audio shield, okay? And so today, what we're going to do, we're actually going to try to plug them together. You know, that's going to be the first part of this week's lab. So as you can tell, they actually are not assembled, and so it means we're going to have to do some soldering to make this happen. Basically, they're going to go on top of each other, just like this. Okay, and to do this, some soldering is going to be involved. And I'm going to show you how to do this now, and then you're going to have to go to the Max Lab to do it by yourself. Like not like during the session, but during the free lab sessions we're going to have this week. Okay, cool. Then you should have these little bags containing these things that we call header pins. And I'm sorry, this is kind of. I think that's okay. Yeah. So those are header pins. Those are the elements we're going to solder to the Teensy and to the outer shield. Okay. So you should have two different sets of them. Okay. So in total you should have four of those. Okay. And the reason why you have four is because you need two for the outer shield and you need two for the Teensy. Be careful when you manipulate them because they're kind of sharp and it's very easy to actually cut your finger touching them. Okay, so be careful. Okay, then there's a bunch of sensors. This guy here is force-sensitive resistor, so it's basically like a pressure sensor. If you press on it, you're going to get different kinds of values. You've got resistors, you've got a piezo. Yep, you should actually have two of them. Piezos are basically contact microphones. Okay, and so we'll use those for lab. I think we're using them for lab 3. Okay, you should have buttons. You should have this guy, which is an accelerometer, and yeah, this one is just an accelerometer. Yeah, so that's an accelerometer. You should have more different kinds of buttons. You should have this thing, which is a light sensor. That's what we call a photoresistor, and basically detects the amount of light you have in space, and it basically outputs some kind of value depending on the amount of light you have in space. Okay. Cool. Then you should have things like this, and those are basically audio jack inputs, right? So they are audio jack inputs, but then you can mount on some kind of casing. Okay. So this thing here is a male jack. Okay. Basically, the male jack goes in the female jack input. Okay. And so these guys are ready to be mounted on a casing or a box or whatever you have, and that's what the screws that you have here are for. Okay. So you should have 4 of those in theory. Okay. Then you should have this thing, which is what? Breadboard. Okay. So breadboard is going to be heavily used in this class. That's what you use to do prototypes of electronic circuits. So breadboards are relatively important. You should have a bunch of wires, and those are called jumper wires. Okay. And they are designed to be used with the breadboard. Hello? You probably.
Sorry, I got lost.
Good. There we go. So basically, these jumper wires are designed to be put in the breadboard. Okay, just like this. Okay. And then you can create connections between different components that you're going to plug on the breadboard. Okay. Should have this thing here. This thing is an ultrasonic sensor. It's a distance sensor. So basically what it does is that it emits ultrasound, and there's a receiver. So if you put your hand in front of it, it basically measures the time it takes to go from here to here and then back to the system. Okay. So if you want to like create a theremin or something like this, that's probably something that you might want to use. The cool thing about this type of distance sensor is that they're very cheap. You can get like think you can get like 8 of them for like $5. You know, like so they're actually very cheap. You know, like so if you want to create like a huge tournament, you could do it just by getting this type of sensor. Okay, you should have a micro USB cable, and I think that should be more or less it. So if you're not sure about what I said, you know, or if you got lost, and if you think that there is an item that is missing in all the stuff that I told you about. So if you go on the course website, go on course website, and sorry, this is, like before COVID-19 teaching was easy, like you only had to teach, now you have to press buttons everywhere, like so that people who are watching you online can see what's going on, anyway. So if you go to lab kits, there is actually the list of elements that you should have in your kit, okay? And the number of items for all of them, okay? So maybe it's a good thing to sort of review this, maybe not now, but after class, just to be sure that you've got everything, okay? Do you have any questions so far? No? Did you all apply to get your 3D printer? If you haven't done it, you should do it like today. Because and if you don't know how to do it, you just go on Canvas, you go in the announcements, and there was an announcement at the beginning of first week or something like this where we told you how to do this. But you should do it now, because they well, I know they have a lot of extra, and I'm sure it can be done like pretty quickly, but still, that's something you definitely want to take care of like as soon as possible. Okay. Who actually got the printer? Okay, good. That's like half of the class. So well, you should get your printer. We're not going to use the 3D printer until probably week 6 or 5. So there's time. But if you don't have it, you should really get it just now. Okay. Cool. So I'm going to sort of give you a very brief demo of how the soldering steps for Lab 2 are going to happen. We don't have like soldering irons for everyone in the room, right? So this is just a demo so that you see how it's supposed to work, okay? And then you're gonna have to do that as part of the lab, okay? So I'm just gonna go through the different steps of the lab just so that we're all on the same line, and visually I think it's very important that you see how that actually goes. So who never soldered before? Okay, that's good. It's not a problem, and all you have to know is that like this first soldering step we're gonna do is not necessarily like the easiest thing to solder in the world. Okay, so it's like if you go skiing, and you go straight on the like red track. Okay, but that's okay. If you screw it up, it's fine. So, okay, I'm gonna push all my mess.
In the American ski system, we don't have red trails. It's just green, blue, black.
Ah, that's true. I completely forgot about this. Well, pardon my Europeanness. That's well, red is hard, basically. Black is like extra hard. But that's true. I forgot about this. Sorry. So the first thing you're gonna need is these guys, okay? And so once again, the first step is gonna be to. I hope you guys can really see what I'm doing here. But the first step. I'm sorry, I need to switch. The first step is gonna be to actually put these things into the holes on the Teensy. Sorry, I'm gonna do it here like this. Okay, so it's basically gonna look like this. Okay. Maybe Well, you know, I think there is this trick, now I remember. I don't know if that really helps, but here we are. You put a sheet paper. Yeah, that's better, right? Okay, so you're gonna have to put these guys on top of the Teensy, okay, just like this. Then you're gonna have to do this on the other side, and then the first thing you're gonna see is that basically the pins that we're putting on the Teensy are too long. Okay, so the first step is you're gonna have to cut them to make them shorter so that they actually fit the size of the Teensy. Okay. To do this, you're gonna want to use a wire cutter. See, like these little wire cutters. So we have a lot in the Max Lab. You're gonna have to find them. That's part of the fun of doing that kind of stuff, you know. So you're gonna have to go to the Max Lab and find the wire cutters. They're close to the soldering iron. Just as a tip. Okay, so basically then what you do, you know, is that you sort of count how many pins you're actually going to need. And so then you're going to want to cut the header exactly on the pin which is next to the last one on the Teensy. Okay, so I think I can zoom. There we go. Better, keeps getting better. So you see that this pin here is basically the last one which is on the Teensy, okay? So that's where you want to cut. You want to cut on the pin, okay? You don't want to cut like on the side of the pin, because if you cut on the side of the pin, it's possible that you're gonna cut the one that is actually in the Teensy, okay? So basically you're just gonna go like this, okay? And if you're not sure, this is going to be this is all recorded, right? Like so if you want to go back, so basically you go exactly on the pin, right? I think that's pretty clear. Okay, and then you just cut it. Okay. So basically, it should look like this. You know, if this is not like perfectly straight, that's totally fine. You know, that it really doesn't matter. Okay, if you want to make it straighter, like you can sort of make it slightly better, but that's basically what you want to do. Then you want to do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to do this again. You know, so basically same story. We're going to cut exactly on the pin and pressing done. Very good. So now it should basically look like this, right? Like, cool. So the next step is we're gonna have to solder this. Okay. This is kind of like this step now, like this very precise step is probably the hardest one. And that's the one where you really need to be very careful when you do it. Because the problem is that we want to be able to solder the pins completely straight on the Teensy. If they are basically like twisted like this, then it's going to be a problem because you're not going to be able to plug your Teensy to the auto shield. Okay, so basically the pins need to be perfectly perpendicular to the Teensy. Okay, so basically just like that, right? So there is no like super simple or practical way of doing this, you know, like especially with the elements you have in the kit, you know, like so you just have to put the Teensy on the table, look at it, and make sure that it's more or less perpendicular. Okay, so it's fine, you know, because you'll see that there is a trick. If you sort of screw it up a little bit, you can actually bend the pin a little bit if necessary. But it's better if you do it right from the beginning. Okay, cool. So then we're going to use the soldering iron. So soldering irons in the Max Lab, they look like this. They're, oops, now I had a lot of shit in it. Sorry. Okay, so they look like this. This is the soldering iron, and then you have the soldering station, which is this blue element that goes here. They all come with a sponge, okay? So the first thing you want to do, and you actually want to do it, that's not a step you want to skip, this is a requirement, You want to go to the bathroom and you want to put water on the sponge. The sponge has to be wet, okay? Because if you're trying to solder without the wet sponge, it means you're probably going to make a mess in the end, okay? So that's like the first step. You go in the bathroom and you put water on the sponge. It's better if the sponge is too wet than not enough, okay? So it's better if it's just like dripping water, you know, than if it's not, okay? Cool. So then you can start the soldering iron, and the soldering iron, so there are two different kinds of MaxLab. Some of them, they have a digital screen, like this one, which indicates the temperature, okay? And others, they just have some kind of potentiometer that allows you to adjust the temperature. So once you started, you have to wait for it to actually warm up. Good temperature, I would say, is like 700 degree Fahrenheit. Okay, so all right. Well, this one is at 820. You can adjust it. 820 is okay, but if you don't know how to solder, it's better if you go at 700, like, because this is super hot, so it means you have less time to solder, basically. Okay. Oh, okay. What did I do? All right. So I think it's back to life. It's back to life. Is it going to be back to life? Okay, it's back to life. Sorry. Yeah, this is a very sensitive setup. So sorry about this. Anyway, so then the soldering iron tip is hot, so you don't want to touch it, right? This is like super hot, right? Like so if you put it in your finger, like it's really going to burn yourself, you know, right? So you want to be careful with this. Then you want to clean up the tip of the soldering iron by putting it on the sponge. You know, usually like what you do is you do like this kind of movement where, you know, just like clean it up, and eventually it should be nice, just like this. Teensy, perfect. Yeah. If it's really dirty, you can use, you know, this thing here, and that's even better. And then you always want to use the sponge. Okay. So when you solder, you want to do it in a room where the windows are open. Okay. And in fact, if you go on the desk in the MaxLab where the soldering irons are, there are small fans that you can turn on to sort of blow solder smokes away from wherever you are. Okay. So, I mean, you know, many people don't care about that kind of stuff, but you know, like solder is pretty nasty. You know, like, I mean, it has lead. You know, blah blah blah. You know, like, and so you definitely want to do this like in an environment where you don't breathe too much solder smoke. Okay. Cool. So, any questions so far, or no? Great. So then you're going to have the solder. So the solder comes in a spool, just like this, okay? And you're going to have to find that in the MaxLab as well. And just like the wire cutters, you're going to be able to find that near the soldering irons, okay? And there are different diameters of solder. And this one is kind of the most practical one for doing this kind of soldering. Like if you get like one that is too thin, it's kind of annoying because it's a little bit harder if you get like thin, and if you get like too thick, then you can really make a mess, you know. Like so if you are not sure, you can come check this at the end of the class just to see like the, well, you know what, I can just do this, you know, and you guys can sort of have a look at it, you know, just to sort of get an idea of what a good diameter for the solder is going to be. Okay. Cool. So then we are actually ready to solder, and so this is always kind of tricky to do this here. So once again, like every time you're going to solder, you want to clean the soldering iron tip. Like even if you did it like 30 seconds ago, you should do it again, you know, because basically there is always corrosion happening on the tip as you are like heating up the soldering iron, and you want to remove corrosion like every time you're gonna do some soldering. So you clean that up, okay? And then the first step is you're gonna want to put some solder on the soldering iron tip, just a little bit, you know, and so you just gonna push on it like this, okay? And usually when it's the first time you're using the soldering iron in a while, sometimes it doesn't really stick on the tip. Here it's sticking a little bit, you know, and so you don't want too much. Like this is too much. Here is too much, you know, you just like clean it up on the sponge, you know, and then you put it back again. Okay, so now this is good. Okay, so just a little bit of solder. Okay, so then you want to solder one pin on each side of the Teensy. Okay, so once again, you want to make sure that the Teensy is perfectly perpendicular to the pins that you installed on it. Okay. Another thing that I want to say before I do it is that the USB port of the Teensy in that case should be like pointing towards the surface where you're doing the soldering. Okay, like you see that the USB port here is below the Teensy. Okay, and this is important, like because you could do this upside down. Okay, and if you do it upside down, then it's going to be really annoying to fix. Okay, so there is actually a direction in which you want to do this. You want to see like Teensy 40.0 like written on the Teensy, not the other way around. Okay, great. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to put some solder. Okay, and then I'm going to go on the first pin here on this corner, and I'm going to heat it up with the soldering iron, and then I'm going to add some solder to it, and that's it. Done. So that's very, very, very quick. And actually, I can just like make it slightly better like this. Okay, so then I'm going to do this again for the other pin, which is on the opposite side. Okay, so here I'm just soldering one pin on each header. And so I'm doing this again. So just heating up the pin, putting some solder, and we are done. Okay, so now actually the pins are holding to the Teensy. Okay, so they're not falling apart, you know. And the first thing I want to do then is to check that they are actually perpendicular to the Teensy. You know, so did I do a good job? I think I did a pretty good job. So just to be sure that they are actually perpendicular, you actually want to take the breadboard, okay? And then you want to try to put the Teensy on the breadboard, okay? Like, so basically you see that the Teensy goes on the breadboard. If you can sort of press the Teensy inside the breadboard, like you have to be very gentle when you do this, okay? So if you can press the Teensy inside the breadboard, just like this, it means that you're good, okay? If for some reasons you didn't do a good job, and the pins are sort of twisted, or you know it's not like 90 degrees perpendicular to the Teensy, then you sort of want to like sort of try to bend them and adjust them at this point. You know, like to make sure that they are actually perpendicular. And this is the right time to do it. Why is this the right time to do it? Because there is only one solder point on the Teensy, so you can still bend it, right? Once they are all soldered, it's going to be too late, okay? Do you have any questions? No? All right. So I'm going to finish that one up, okay? And this is going to take like probably 1 minute. So before I do it, I just want to insist on one thing. I don't know if I can extra zoom. Ooh, thank you. Look at this. All right. I mean, I can give it to you like once I'm done with it, you know, like, but what's important is that basically your solder point kind of has to have a cone shape, okay? And it has to cover entirely the hole on the Teensy. Like you see, like on the Teensy, like you have the holes, okay? And so like solder has to cover the hole, okay? And then you need to sort of have this nice cone shape. You know, if it looks like a bubble, or like a ball on top of the hole, then it's not good. And then if you have this kind of problem, what you want to do is you actually want to heat it up again so that the solder melts and goes inside the hole, okay? Another thing you want to be careful about is that you only want to put solder on the hole, okay? If you, for some reason, if you make a mess, you know, and you put solder like everywhere, like between two holes, then it means you're going to connect the two pins together, and that can be a problem. So you don't want to connect two pins together. Like each pin has to be independent. Okay, cool. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just finish this. And sorry, this is I think it's just a good example. So this is probably gonna take you like 2 minutes to do. So I'm just gonna add. So once again, like what you heat up the pin and then you bring solder. You inject solder on the pin to sort of melt it, right? And so like you heat up the pin and then you bring the solder, okay? Heat up the pin and then bring the solder. Heat up the pin, bring the solder. Okay, and you want to do this quickly. Okay, it's okay like if you know like it. Like, I'm used to do this, you know, like so I go pretty quick. It's okay if you heat up the pin for like say 4 seconds, 5 seconds. But if you don't manage to do it in 5 seconds, then it's better that you stop. You wait. And then you do it again, okay? So the problem is that, once again, this is hot, right? 820 Fahrenheit. So this is hot, and the Teensy is pretty fragile, you know, like, and so if you heat up the Teensy for too long, you might actually burn it, okay? So you want to be careful about this. And if the tip of your soldering iron is getting too dirty, you want to clean it up using this one. Okay, so once again, heat up and then bring the solder. Sorry, this is kind of blurry, but maybe I should. Okay, cool. So I got one side done. Yeah. Just gonna do the other side. So you should not try to go as fast as I'm doing it. Like this is probably gonna take you like at least 30 minutes. Like if it's the first time you're doing it, like this is like a slow process, you know, and so like and then eventually you're gonna get good at it, and it should be pretty quick. Okay. Cool. So once you are at this point, the headers are actually connected to the Teensy. Okay. So if you know what you're doing, you don't necessarily have to come ask the TA, Mike, about it. But at this point, if you're in the lab, you want to come see Mike or myself, and you want to ask us if that's good or not. Okay. The reason for that is because either maybe you did not connect all the pins, which could be a problem, or even worse, you actually connected pins together, in which case when you power the Teensy, you might actually fry it, okay? So if you don't know what you're doing, you want to come see Mike or me and be like, is this okay? Is this not okay? And if we have a doubt, we'll probably have to use a multimeter to make sure that it's okay. You know, here I think like visually it looks okay, so it's probably okay. Yeah, cool. So the next step is you're actually going to want now to do the same thing, but for the audio shield. Okay. So once again, the Teensy is basically a small, tiny computer. That's what's going to retrieve sensor values. That's what's going to do computing for audio processing. This component here is basically what creates the audio output. And this is a pretty cool thing, you know, because basically you get stereo in, left and right. You get stereo out, left and right. You get a microphone input, which I think is, where's the microphone input? Yeah, there it is. You get a microphone input, so you can actually plug a microphone on this. And there's an audio jack output, so that you can actually plug your headphones. Okay, so that's what actually adds audio to your Teensy. Okay. So to do this, you're gonna want to take the two other headers, and you're gonna want to do the same thing as for the Teensy. So like you put the headers on the audio shield, and then you're gonna cut them to make sure that they have the right length. Okay, so it's exactly the same as for the Teensy. You want to put them exactly on the pin. Okay, just like that. Okay, so like again. All right, and then I will do it on the other side. There you go. Sorry. Shit, I missed you. Okay, so this is the Teensy, this is the audio shield. So now you don't have to worry so much about making it perpendicular because you actually have the Teensy that you can use as a guide, basically, right? So basically, you're gonna put the Teensy upside down, and then you're gonna put the audio shield on the Teensy. And now you don't have to worry once again about the fact that it's going to be perpendicular or not. Because the Teensy is actually a guide for what you are doing. Okay? Great. So you do want to make sure that things are, well, if you're not sure, you can actually press, and then it's even better, because now it looks like this. Okay, now you're sure that it's going to be perpendicular, it's not moving and not going anywhere. Okay, so then it is the same story. You basically want to solder everything on the audio shield. So you heat up the pin and then you bring solder. Once again, this is kind of an important step that people always kind of miss, like first you put solder on the tip. And the reason why you do this is so that the tip is actually going to stick to the pin. Okay? If there is no solder, it's not going to work as well as if there is solder. And then the solder you're putting on the pin is the one that you are injecting with your left or right hand. Okay? And so, let's just do this. Cool. So I had one ready in the Max Lab, and I forgot to bring it, and I'm too lazy to go there. So I'm just going to finish this now, and I think it'll just be quicker, and it's also kind of good for the sake of the demo. So, okay. Great. And then you want to do the other side. Cool. So if for some reasons you made a mess and you put like too much solder and you connected two pins together, most of the time we're going to be able to fix it unless you did something really, really, really bad. The way we can fix this is by using this tool, which is basically a solder sucker. So like have this trigger here, push it, and then what you do is if you want to remove solder, there are a bunch in the Max Lab. Like basically what you do is that you heat up the pin where you want to remove the solder, and you're just going to put like the solder sucker next to the pin, and then here I'm just going to like heat it up, press the trigger, and then it like just took the solder. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do it a bunch of times, but that's kind of a very, very, very convenient tool. Okay. now have to do it again.
So if you mess up, you can do that, right?
Yeah. Well, unless you did something really, really bad. I mean, it's pretty low risk here. Like, I mean, it's really hard, like, to, I haven't seen anyone, like, completely destroying a Teensy or an audio shield in 258. So, like, I think it really doesn't happen, but like, it would happen if you're, like, taking the soldering iron and, like, heating up the Teensy for, like, 30 seconds and just, like, putting, like, tons of solder, you know, like, then that would, like, fry it. But as long as you remember that, you know, like, this can be very frustrating, and if you're the kind of person who gets, like, angry when you do that kind of stuff, and, like, I know it's the case of some people, then, like, you just want to take a break, you know, like, you go take a walk, you know, like, you breathe, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna do it, and then you come back, you're like if you insist, and like, just, you know, like, I mean, that's, I've seen people in 258 doing that, actually. Like, later in the quarter, like, people being, like, getting so mad at their project that they actually destroy it, you know? So don't do that. That'd be a pity. Cool, so we're done. We have the Teensy mounted on the audio shield. So what's kind of convenient with using this kind of headers is that if you actually want to pull the Teensy and use it for something else, you can actually do it. You know, like, so if you don't want to do, like, audio and you just want to use the Teensy as a basic microcontroller, you can just do things this way. And so in the end, you have these two components, and you can connect them to each other. Okay. So one thing I forgot to say is that there is an orientation to solder the pins on the audio shield, just like on the Teensy. So you want to put, like, the black thing on the same side as the audio jack. Okay. If you do it the other way around, like, then it's really going to be a pain to unsolder everything and, like, put it back in the right direction. Okay. Cool. So at this point, you should have these two elements. Okay. So then you want to connect them together, and there is also an orientation for that. And basically, the rule is that the USB port on the Teensy has to be on the same side as the audio jack output. Okay. So basically, the USB port is pointing in the direction here, and same for the audio jack. And so you just want to connect the Teensy on the audio shield. When you do this, you want to press the Teensy inside the pins. Okay, so, like, you want to, like, put some force when you do it. You want to be very careful because those things are very fragile and it's very easy to bend them. So so you want to make sure, you know, that they're all going in the headers, and that some of them are not, like, outside or twisted or whatever. Okay, so just like this. Yeah? Questions? No? Cool. So then after that, we are actually ready to make sound, and we are ready to program the Teensy. Okay, so I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, it's still working. So I'm gonna switch here to camera. Very cool. So I'm gonna start my computer screen. I need to switch here as well. Okay. Great. No. So when this will all be fixed, it's going to be much faster. But for now, like, every time you switch between the laptop and the Elmo, it takes a while. Okay, great. So to program the Teensy, you're going to have to install, and actually, if you have your computers with you, like, if you want to save time, it's probably a good time to do this. You're going to have to install Teensy Duino on your computer. So this is all in Lab 2. So so if you miss some of these steps, you can actually go back to Lab 2, you know, and find the links to do this directly in Lab 2. But basically, if you look for Teensy Duino on the web. So this is the page for Teensy Duino. There is a link in the lab again, right? So it's on pjrc.com. And then basically you just want to like download Teensy Duino and install it on your computer. Teensy Duino is a software add-on for the Arduino, blah blah blah. So you just want to like follow the steps here, you know, like see there is a link for download and install. You take the version that you need for your system, you download it on your computer, and then you install it. Okay. So what is Teensy Duino? So you can actually program the Teensy using the Arduino IDE. Okay, and so for those of you who never used the Arduino IDE is just an environment where you can write code to program this type of system. Okay, and the Teensy and the Arduino use the same interface, they use the same environment, so basically a Teensy and an Arduino are literally just the same thing. So it's just that the Teensy is more powerful, and because it's more powerful, we can do audio with it. Okay. So once Teensy Duino is installed on your system, you can open it, and well, in my case, I need to do it from a terminal, but if you have a Mac, it's probably easier, okay? And essentially, this is just gonna look like this. So I don't know if there is anyone online. No, there is no one online. Well, if you watch this video later, I'm sorry you cannot see my screen, but this is because of the dead Extron HDMI switch. So this is not a problem for you guys, but I'm just talking to the people who might be watching or not, or if it's you later. So this is the best I can do. I'm sorry. Before you, it's okay. Cool. So once you start the Arduino software, this is basically what you're gonna get. You're just gonna get a window with some code, okay? And the code you're gonna put in here is the code that is gonna program the Teensy, okay? Cool. So, close this. At this point, you actually probably want to connect the Teensy to your computer. And in fact, you could even like do it now if you wanted to. You know, like, I mean, it's not a problem. It's just it's not going to make sound because it's not like properly wired. And to do this on my computer, I need a USB adapter for the USB-C port. Okay. So there are some rules you need to know about the Teensy before you actually power it, okay? The first rule is you really want to make sure that you did a good job with soldering. So in your case, it's fine, you know, because you didn't solder anything yet. But if for some reasons you did not solder things properly, like when you're going to power the Teensy, you can completely fry it if it's not like wired properly. So one thing we're going to use a lot as part of this class is this resource, and there is a link in the lab too. If you look for Teensy 4.0 pinout, you're basically going to get a map of the different pins that are available on the Teensy. Okay. And yeah, there we go. So that is not the 4.0. This is the 4.0. Yeah. So basically, this map gives you an overview of what the different pins on the Teensy are doing. Okay. There is a very, very dangerous pin on the Teensy. You want to be very careful with it, and it's this one here. So, like, if you look at the Teensy from the top, that's the pin which is right next to the USB port on the Teensy. The reason why this pin is so dangerous, it's not going to kill you, right? But it might actually kill your Teensy if you do something wrong with it. So this pin is directly connected to the USB power on the Teensy. USB power is 5 volts, okay? Your Teensy is running actually at 3.3 volts, okay? So it means that on this pin, you get too much power. So if you plug this pin to any of the pins on the Teensy, there is a risk that you actually fry your Teensy, okay? So that's pretty much the only pin you need to be careful about. Like, so you never want to wire 5 volts pin to any of the pins on the Teensy. So like, for example, if you made a mess when you were soldering and this pin and this pin are connected, because, you know, like you put too much solder, if you like wire these two pins together, you might actually fry the Teensy. You might even crash the USB power on your computer, if it's a bad computer. So you want to be careful with this, okay? So that's the first thing you need to be aware of. The other thing you need to be aware of, you know, is that in theory, honestly, like no one really does that, you know, like, but in theory, whenever you're going to manipulate an electronic circuit like this, you should discharge yourself from potential static electricity that you would have in your body. So the big problem with doing this, especially in the United States, is that, so in Europe it's very easy to do it because you just go on a plug and you actually touch the ground, because you can touch the ground on plugs, you know, in Europe, you know, like like not like the neutral, you know, like but the actual ground, and if you touch it, then you just discharge yourself. Because you know, like sometimes you build up static electricity, and if you touch like some sensitive components on the board, you might actually fry the board, just because of the static electricity you might have in your body. So I don't know if there's like an easy way of doing this here, but like most of the time, like people would want to do this. Anyway, this is just, I guess you can't really do that. I never thought about this actually. I never do it, so so that's okay. You know, like, but I've seen people actually frying boards with static electricity. Anyway, so once this is done, you want to plug the USB cable to the Teensy, right? And you want to be very, very gentle, okay? Because the USB port on the Teensy is very fragile. And you can see that once this is done, you actually get a lot of torque to potentially break it. So you want to be careful with this. You know, like I've seen a lot of students destroying their Teensy because they don't like pay attention when they you know, manipulate the Teensy, and then they just like paf, they just like break the USB port. Once the USB port is broken, you can't really put it back on. Okay, so so you want to be careful. Yeah, so feel free to do it. I mean, once again, you know, like that's. Even though you're not going to be able to make sound, you should still be able like to wire the Teensy to your computer. So, okay, then you can wire the Teensy to your computer. Okay, and in theory, if everything is going well, your Teensy should be blinking. Okay, so there is an LED on the Teensy, or an orange LED. And when you plug the Teensy to your computer, that LED should be blinking in orange, just like this, right? Cool.
Is there an adapter there for USB-C?
Is there an adapter for? I
Oh yeah, the gray one. Yeah.
That's for HDMI.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay, so that's the code you're gonna put on the Arduino. This code is correct. It is a valid code, but it's not doing anything. Okay, so so basically, the first thing you're gonna want to do here, you're gonna want to go in Tools, and those steps are important. If you don't do them, it's not gonna work. So, and then you're gonna complain, and then you're gonna see Mike and tell him, yeah, it doesn't work, and then Mike is gonna be like, yeah, you should have listening class. So anyway, so you go in Tools, and then in Tools, you go in Board, and then in Board, you want to go in Teensy Arduino. It's depending on the platform you're using, that might be slightly different, you know, but the bottom line is you want to select Teensy 4.0, okay? So like the hierarchy of this menu might be different if you're on Windows or on the Mac or on Linux, okay? But like in the end, what you want to do is go in board, and then in board, you want to select the Teensy 4.0. If you don't do this, it's not gonna work, okay? So you select the Teensy 4.0. If you go back in Tools, you can see that you can sort of customize the configuration of your Teensy, you know, and so by default, you just want to use 600 megahertz, you know, and that's the default. So in theory, you should not have to think about this, but you do want to make sure that this is properly selected, okay? Then in USB type, you want to make sure that serial is selected as well, okay? So Tools, USB type, serial. And finally, port. You want to make sure that in port, your Teensy 4.0 is selected. Okay? If it's not the case, by default, it should be selected. But on some platforms, especially on the Mac, sometimes it doesn't find the Teensy, and so you have to select it. Okay. Right? Cool. So once this is done, you can actually press the upload button, which is on the top left corner of the interface, like right here. And if you click on upload, some stuff is going to happen. Then it's going to open this little window, and you know, if everything goes well, like the system should be happy, and the LED should not blink anymore. Okay. Can someone guess why the LED is not blinking anymore?
The code's not doing anything.
There we go. The code is not telling the LED to blink, right? So everything on the Teensy can be accessed, like including the LED on top of the Teensy. If you want the LED to blink, you have to tell it to blink in the code. Okay? The code here is not doing anything, so the LED is not blinking. Who used Arduinos before? Okay, so that's it's like half of you. So just as a very like brief reminder, so in any Arduino program, you always have the setup and the loop function. Okay, the setup function is called once when you plug your Teensy or your Arduino to your computer. So like that's like the first thing that happens. Like when you plug it to your system, setup is called, and so it's called only once. So all the stuff that you want to do only once, you want to put them in setup. Okay. And then loop is going to be called forever in a loop. Okay. So everything you're going to put in here is going to be called blah 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 blah. Okay. And then it's going to start again and again and again and again until you unplug the Teensy and then it stops. Okay. So that's kind of the life cycle of the Teensy. Like you plug it, called setup, and then loop starts, and then it goes forever until you unplug the Teensy. Okay. Great. So now what we want to do is we actually want to run some Faust program on the Teensy. And I'm going to show you how to potentially do this. So you want to go in the Faust IDE, and I'm pretty sure that at this point you guys are all experts in using the Faust IDE. Or at least I hope so. And I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to start this new file, and so I'm going to import std faust.lib. Okay, I'm going to create a process, and for now, I'm just going to put a sawtooth wave in the process. Okay. So I want to be able to control the frequency of my, sorry, this is kind of small, so I'm going to zoom in. Okay, so I want to be able to control the frequency, so I'm going to call it, I'm going to create a F parameter, and I'm going to say that F is equal to a slider. And I'm going to call this freak, and then say, for example, 440 hertz. as the default, 50 as the minimum, 2000 as the maximum, and 0.01 as the step. Okay. Cool. So I'm sure you all know this at this point, right? Just to make things slightly nicer, I think this is something that we haven't talked about during past classes, actually, but you actually want to smooth whatever you're going to get from the slider here. And do you know why I'm doing this, or I don't think we talked about it.
Oh, it was in the lab thing. Yeah.
Maybe that was part of the lab,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so you'll know what smooth is doing if you actually did the lab, okay? So the reason, like, once again, why we're using smooth here is because the slider is not running at the same speed as the audio rate of your system, right? Like, basically, on the web browser here, I get one new audio sample every 48,000 cycles, so like 48,000 times per second, okay? The user interface you have in the web browser is running much slower than this, right? Like, it's probably only like 25 or 30 frames per second, right? So if you don't put a smooth, you're gonna hear steps when you move the slider, and so you do want to put the smooth so that there's interpolation happening on the user interface element, so that whenever you move the slider, it's kind of smooth, you know, and there is no like steps. Okay. So like if I run this, sorry, I will put it on mono, and why am I not? Alright, right now sound is coming from my computer, and I'm not really sure why. Well, it was better when it was coming from my computer. Oh, yes. Everything is broken. So it's probably better if it's coming from my computer. Anyway, if I move the slider, right? Okay. Cool. So now I want to export that to the Teensy. And to export that to the Teensy, I'm going to click on the little truck here, export. And then I'm going to give a name to my program. This is important. Like the name you're going to give to your program here. In fact, you know, like I could even do it directly here. I think that's kind of cleaner. I'm going to call this Faust sawtooth.dsp. Okay. That name here is important because that's going to be the name of your Faust object in the Teensy environment. Okay. So you want to make sure you choose that name wisely. Okay. Then you're going to go and export, and you can see that now the file name has been updated. This one here, so this is Faust sawtooth. Then you want to go to platform, Teensy, and then you want to select architecture Teensy as the target. Okay, so Teensy as the platform and Teensy as the architecture. Okay. Then you're going to click on compile. This should be very quick. This is done. Then you want to download whatever you created. And so what you're going to get is a zip file. So the zip file has been downloaded on my computer, and it's called binary.zip right here. If you open this file, you'll see that there are two elements in it. There's a .cpp file and a .h file. Okay. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to take these two files and put them in the Teensy project that we just created. Okay. So if you go back to the Teensy, to the Arduino interface, so that's our Arduino program. The first thing you want to do here is you want to save it. Okay. So you go and save. I'm going to do save as, and I'm going to call it 250A. Pretty bad name. and I'm saving it. Okay, so now this project is saved on my computer in my Arduino folder. Okay, so like you have to remember where you saved it, right? So then on the computer, I'm gonna go in my Arduino folder, which is right here, and I can find 250A. Okay, so this is 250A that I just created. Okay, and if I open this folder, in this folder, I'm gonna find 250A.ino, which is the file that is open in the Faust, in the Arduino IDE. Okay. Then I just want to drag and drop the Faust.cpp and Faust sawtooth.h file that were created from the IDE in that folder. Oops. So I just drag and drop them. Okay. Is that okay or cool? So now these files are visible from my Arduino interface. Okay, so now I can call them here and use them. Okay. So here I'm gonna sort of skip some steps, and I'm just gonna copy and paste things from the lab. The lab, which is actually just pointing at this tutorial on the Faust website, which is DSP on the Teensy with Faust. And yeah, I'm gonna just copy this and explain it. I think this is gonna save us some time. Okay. So, just trying to make this a little bit more visible to you guys. Okay. Great. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to include audio.h because you're going to do audio stuff. Okay. So the Teensy comes with this thing, which is called the Teensy audio library. Okay. And there is a link to the Teensy audio library in the lab. So if you want to like check it out, you can. Okay. Then I'm going to include Faust sawtooth.h. Okay, and Faust sawtooth.h is basically my Faust generated file that I created on the Faust web IDE. Okay. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a Faust sawtooth object, and that Faust sawtooth object is basically the Faust sawtooth object that I created once again in the Faust IDE. This is Faust sawtooth. Okay. And so this is the object which is actually going to generate sound on the Teensy. Okay. So do you know what language this is, by the way? Like programming language?
C like is not.
It is actually C.
Oh,
I mean,
is it just pure C?
Yeah, it is actually C. I mean, it's even like C++ actually. And it is C++. It's just that they sort of managed to wrap it in a way that is not too complicated. But basically, this is C++. It's just like a very light way of dealing with C++, but it is actually C++, right? And so in C++, there is a standard that when you have a class, the implementation of the class usually starts with a capital letter, and then when you actually like declare it, then you have a lowercase. Okay, so I just use this way. You don't have to do it. Okay, but this is kind of a standard in C++, like more like a convention. Okay, and then we create an audio output I2S object. So this is going to be your audio output. So when you do this, you basically say, okay, I'm creating an audio output on the audio shield connected to the Teensy. Okay. So basically you're going to have to connect this to this, right? Next step. You create an audio control SGTL 5000 object. Okay, so this is basically the audio chip on the audio shield. you're going to be able to use this object to configure the audio shield. What does that mean? It means that you're going to be able to configure the volume of the audio shield, the volume of the input, the volume of the output, maybe apply some filters or whatever you like. So this is basically what allows you to configure the audio shield. Okay? It's not the same as the output, right? So you can configure the way the output is going to behave with this, but the actual audio output is this object. Okay. Then you're going to create audio connections. And the audio connections we are creating here are essentially just here to connect the Faust object to the output of the audio shield. So basically what we do here is that we say, okay, I take Faust sawtooth, and Faust sawtooth has only one output, right? Because if you look at the block diagram of my Faust object, there is only one output, right? And so basically, we take the output of Faust sawtooth, the first one, and then we connect it to the first input of the output object, right? And because the audio shield is stereo, we want to get sound both on the left and on the right channel. So we have to do this again for the second output, well, the second input of the output object, right? If your Faust object was a stereo object, you would not do the things this way, right? Like you would say like 0 here and 1 here, right? So, and that would work fine.
What if we're trying to map, like let's say our output from the Faust program is 4 channels, could we map multiple audio connections into one output or no?
No, that would not work. This is kind of a convention of the Teensy audio library, because basically these objects are coming from the Teensy audio library. And so if you wanted to do that, you would have to use a mixer, and you would have to connect this mixer to the output.
Okay.
I think my mic died.
Oh no.
But well, I hope it did not like screw up the recording too much, but okay. Well, and then there is a backup mic here, so so like in theory it's okay, but yeah, everything is dying. You know, too much technology. Yeah, I think it's like running out of battery. So, all right, that's okay. So I mean you're here, so I don't think there's anyone on. Yeah, that's good. Okay, so yeah, no, if you wanted to do what you're describing, you would have to use a mixer object in the Teensy audio library, and then you would have to connect that object to the output. But you cannot like send multiple stream of audio signal to the same output. So. All right, so once this is done, so basically this is just your patch, you know, like if you are a MaxMSP user, this is just like connecting the boxes of your MaxMSP patch together, you know, and then to the output, right? Okay, then in setup, we need to do a couple of things here. The first thing we want to do is we want to allocate some memory for audio. Don't ask me what this is doing. No one ever understood what it does. You know, like, and if you go in the documentation of the Teensy audio library, it's very poorly explained. You know, like so this is very mysterious. Like all you have to know is that you have to put 2 here if you want an output, and if you want to have an input, you probably need to put 6 or whatever. But I think this is explained in the lab, you know, and that's all the explanations I can give you, you know, and there are a lot of discussions on forums about like what this is doing, and no one really knows what it is. But if you don't put it, it doesn't work. That's all you have to know. All right, then you need to configure the audio shield. And to do this, you first need to enable it, okay? And so when you call this function, you're just starting the audio chip on the audio shield, and then it's doing all the basic steps that are required for it to actually work. Okay. And then finally, at least you want to configure the output volume of the audio shield. And so what this volume is controlling is basically the volume of the jack output on the audio shield, okay? You don't want to put it too loud because there is a built-in amplifier for headphones. And so if you say like one here and you have your headphones on, like, by the way, so if this is the first time you take a class at CCRMA, there's one thing you need to be aware of when you deal with writing audio signal processing and making sound on your computer, is that if you are working with headphones, you gotta be very careful, right? Because it's very easy to write a program which is gonna be potentially unstable or very loud, right? So if you put like headphones and you write like some code and it's bad, you know, sometimes it's just gonna be like, bah! You know, and then you're, you know, and so we've all been through that at some point in our life, you know. But and once you did it a couple of times, then you learn, you know, and then you're more careful. But like if you put one here, that's gonna be like a lot, right? So 0.1 is probably okay. And
Is the volume like also like on a logarithmic scale, or is that like linearized? Or like, are we gonna perceive 0.1 as a tenth as?
I'm not sure. So basically what, because you know, like you could control the volume from the Faust program as well, right? This is the hardware volume. So basically this is the gain of the amplifier of the headphones.
I see. Okay, so it's not trying to map like a linear perception of loudness. This is just
No,
pure gain of the.
in fact, you should not use this to sort of dynamically change the volume of your system. So like you, for example, you don't want to like map a potentiometer to this because this is a hardware volume. So like when you're going to move it, there's probably going to be like clicks or steps or whatever. So if you actually want to control the volume of your program, it's better to do it directly in Faust. You know, so
like
this
gain attribute or parameter.
There we go, you know, like, so this is like the max gain, basically, right? Like, this is like the max volume. Is it logarithmic or linear? I'm not sure, but this is a hardware parameter. And if you go in the documentation of the Teensy audio library, which is, there's a link to it in the lab, you can, you know, get a whole list of all the things that you can configure on the Teensy audio shield, you know, so that is like one of them.
Mm-hmm. How bad an idea is it to mess with the CPP file that you get when you download from?
I mean, like you can. I mean, it's just that it's pretty nasty actually. Like if you open it, you will see that it is actually how many? This is like 10,000 lines, 10,000 lines long. So it's not very like hackable. I mean, it is hackable if you know Faust, you know, like, and you know, like, because you know, like, probably 2/3 of the things you have in here are completely useless. You know, which in C++ is okay, you know, like, because like in C++, once this gets turned into like an object, binary object, like the things that are not used are just like ignored, right? Like, and they don't become part of the object. Yeah, this is not like super hackable, but it's actually kind of instructive to have a look at it at some point, like if you're interested, you know, and basically, if you want to do this, I recommend that you start from the bottom of the file, right? Like, you know, you don't want to start from the top, because the bottom of the file contains the important stuff, right? And like for instance, yeah, this is like this part here is basically just the implementation of your audio engine for your Faust object, and wait, where is it? Yeah, there we go. Like this is the line that sorts of does everything. So basically that's the line that computes the audio, taking an input and giving an output. right? And so that's like the content of this method was generated by the Faust compiler. You can probably find it.
I guess like a lot of the stuff above is like the logic for
Well,
the sawtooth and.
there we go. So that's your compute method, and that's the implementation of your Faust sawtooth. So it's not like super legible, but like, I don't know, if you're, yeah, diving, okay, yeah, think about it, it is completely dead. So, like, if you're used to it, you can kind of like sort of see through it. Like, I mean, I kind of can see what this is doing, like, but this sawtooth wave is a band limited sawtooth wave. So it means that it's not just a regular sawtooth wave, like, so it has interpolation and some like filters built in, and that's why it's kind of a little bit longer. But that's what was generated in C++ by Faust, basically. All right. So for now, I'm just going to comment this out here, and I'm just going to try to upload this on the Teensy. Okay, so I'll upload it. So this should take longer because basically this is going to compile the Teensy audio library. This is going to compile your Faust object, like so. So you see that it's taking way more time than before. Okay. So if everything went well, you should not get any error, and then there should be sound coming out of my Teensy. To hear sound coming out of my Teensy, yeah.
You just commented out that.
Yeah, this is fine. Like I should still get sound.
Well, this is the default.
And hopefully, okay. So how do I? Yes.
Usually I don't screen has a stuff there.
Yeah, but the screen is no more.
Yeah,
Like this is like that was in the old days, like that's yeah, everything died yesterday evening, basically. I got an email from Matt like last night where he was like, yeah, this is gonna be tough tomorrow morning for you, so you better come in advance, so the little screen is no. What if I? There it is. Okay. So so what we hear now is the sawtooth wave coming out of the Teensy, and to prove it, I'm gonna unplug it. And then I'm going to reactivate the audio, no more sound, okay? So this is actually coming out of the Teensy, I'm not lying. If you wanted to make it louder, you could obviously just set this to 1, which is fine because here I'm not using headphones, right? And then if I upload the program again, then it should be quicker, because everything is already like. And then if I turn it on, there we go. So this is the Faust sawtooth wave running on the Teensy. Okay. So to me, this is kind of cool because I think I already said that in previous classes, but like doing what we're doing here was not possible to do like 5 years ago. Like microcontrollers were not powerful enough to do this. And it's pretty amazing. And now you get like this thing, which is so tiny, right? I mean, it's very small. It cost like $30 or something like this, and it's doing real-time audio processing without an operating system. This is something that was not possible 5 years ago when this class was taught. So I think I always kind of get excited when I see this happen. Anyway. So this is cool, we're making sound. Now we actually want to control sound, And so this is what the line that I commented out here is kind of doing. So how do you control what's happening in your Faust object? To do this, you want to use the setParam_value method, okay? So basically you take your Faust object, then you call setParam_value, and setParam_value takes 2 arguments. The first one is going to be the name of the parameter you want to control. So here on the Teensy, we don't have a graphical user interface, right? So what happens is that the slider that we created here becomes accessible in the code using the name that we gave to it here in Faust. Okay, so basically this freak here is the same as this freak here, right? So it means that here, if I change this to like frequency, and I leave this code here, it's not gonna work anymore, right? So basically, every time you want to create a parameter to your Faust program, which is gonna be accessible in the Teensy audio library, or like in the Teensy IDE, you want to create a new user interface element, like a slider or whatever you want. You know, like it's they all become accessible on the Arduino side using the set param value method. Does that make sense, or?
I guess like the name of the slider can also have like some additional like string parameters, like what, like how you want the UI to display or the index.
This all gets ignored. So so like what matters is the like, you know, like in Faust you can create like paths, for example, like for your slider, you know, like say like you have like a vertical group, and the name of the group is going to be like Toto, and then Toto is in TT, and then you know, like something like this. Like what matters is frequency in the end. Like that's like this part actually gets ignored. If you add a metadata for example, MIDI control, so like MIDI CTRL and then 10 or 12 or something like this, you know, like this is just sort of ignored. Okay, so so basically the only thing that matters is the name you give to the parameter here. So every time you want to create a new parameter, you just need to create a new user interface element in Faust, which just becomes accessible using setParam value. You can call this method wherever you want in the code. So like you can call it in setup, you can call it in loop, you can call it as many times as you want. This is just the way you interact with your Faust object. Okay. Yep.
So is there no difference between using like an N entry and an H slider when you do it to Teensy?
No difference whatsoever. In fact, maybe it's more intuitive to use an N entry, because you're like, okay, I'm using a numerical entry to configure, like, you could even use a button. That would work. Like, you could literally just, don't do it. But, like, you could literally just do this, which is horribly dirty. You'd be able to control the frequency parameter using your button.
And
Would that go like just 1 hertz?
I don't know, it would work. Like this is very dirty. Like don't do that. Like that's because this can actually create problems. In that case, it's probably not going to create any problem. But if you're controlling like the duration of an echo, for example, where basically the slider is going to determine the maximum length of your D line, because you are not determining it here, that can potentially be a problem. So
basically all the UI checks that are done on the Web IDE are disabled. Like you could just set the parameters to anything.
Anything.
What, like any data type, or does it have to be numbers, or?
I mean, like the bottom line is every user interface element in Faust is pointing to floating points in memory.
Okay.
Whether it's a button or a slider or whatever, it's all like pointing to floating point. Okay.
Okay.
And so so here, what you do in the Arduino IDE is that you're just setting the value for the address to that floating point. That's it. So here what I'm doing is I'm setting the value of frequency to be a random value between 50 and 1000 hertz, right? So random is just a built-in function of the Teensy environment. And so here I'm just generating a random value between 50 and 1000. And then what I do is that I wait for 50 microseconds, and then I do it again, okay? So basically what this is doing is that this is changing the value of frequency every 50 microseconds and giving it a random value, right?
Microseconds.
Yeah, well, let's try it. You know, if we don't like it, we can change it. But okay, so I'm uploading the code, and so random values every 50 microseconds. And so you're getting the because of the smooth, right? If you didn't have the smooth, you would get like an or and so here, like you know, like you get the more like wobbly sound because you are actually like smoothing it.
How precise is the timing?
What?
How precise is the timing?
It's very, very precise. I mean, it's like it's as precise as it gets. You know, like I mean, yeah. Well,
So you can actually use it to control like musical timing.
yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, so the timing depends on the block size that you are using for your audio system here. So I don't know if this is like the right class to talk about this. You're like, but this is kind of an interesting question. So like if you don't really like get what I'm saying, like that's okay. But like I think it's an interesting comment. So every user interface element in an audio program, and it's not just in Faust, you know, like it's in general, is not running at the same speed as the audio rate, right? So basically, you have an audio program, like you have two different speeds. Like you have basically the audio speed, right? And above this, you have like the control speed, okay? And so audio rate is basically your audio sampling rate, which on the Teensy, I forgot what it is, you know, like, but it's probably like 48 kilohertz, so 48,000 hertz, okay? So like 48K. And then you have your control rate, okay, which is going like slower. So it means that those user interface elements that you have here are actually running at the control rate, not at the audio rate. So like the refresh rate of this is slower than the actual audio rate. And it is determined by the block size that you are using in your system, okay? So on an audio system, you cannot just like send audio samples one by one to your audio chip, because basically your computer cannot keep up with it. It's going too fast, you know? So basically, instead of doing that, what you do is that you generate a buffer of samples with a certain size, like a certain length, and then you send that to your audio chip. If you are using an FPGA, for example, you can actually send samples one by one, because the FPGA can keep up with that. But if you're using a microcontroller or you're using a CPU on your laptop, you cannot do this, right? So on a laptop or a desktop computer, usually the lowest block size you're going to be able to get is going to be something around 32 samples, okay? So that means that the control rate is basically the sampling rate divided by 32, okay? So that's the precision you get here. You know, like, so the precision you get here in terms of sampling rates is basically one, well, not in terms of sampling rate, but in terms of seconds, it's like 1 over 48,000 divided by 32, okay? That's the precision you get. in practice, on a laptop or a desktop computer, you never use 32 because it's too risky. Because your computer is not going to be able to keep up with it. Like maybe after 10 minutes, it's going to drop a buffer, and then you're going to hear it. And if you're doing a concert with 30,000 people in front of you, which we all do very often, right? Then people are going to be very mad, because audio crashed in the middle of the concert, right? So in practice, the safe number for this, it's more like 128. I think that's like a standard. You can go down to 64 if you want to push it. The 32, you're really pushing it. On the Teensy, because there is no operating system, you can actually go as low as 4, and then you're pushing it too. So by default, I think the Teensy is configured at 32. But in the lab, there is a link where I show you how to change that so that you can take it down to 8 or 4. And that's also what determines the audio latency, right? And so, but in any case, this is very precise, because here, even if we only have a block size of 128 samples, if you break it down to the precision in seconds, basically this is just going to be if your block size is 128, then you're going to say that you have 48,000 divided by 128, and then this is going to be 1/375. So that's basically the precision of your system in second.
Right.
So 0.002 0.003 second, which is pretty precise, even if you're a very good musician, and you really break down time a lot, I'm pretty sure this is fine, no one is going to notice it. So
I mean, I know on a system with a CPU and an operating system, if you wait for 2 seconds or something, because of how the scheduler is not deterministic, that 2 seconds might be 2.5 or 1.8 seconds. So does that not happen on the Teensy because there's no scheduler?
Yeah, and no, that is a very good. Those are very good questions. So if you have an operating system, if you run audio in real time, audio needs to have, the audio thread needs to have the highest priority on the system. There is no other way. And this is always a problem because if you go in big companies at Google, for example, they always have a lot of discussions about this, because they hate when a service in the company is yeah, we need to have a thread with the highest priority, because everyone wants the highest priority, but the problem is that if audio is not running at the highest priority, then it's very slow, so if you run audio with the highest priority, even on a laptop or whatever, you're okay, it's not going to be completely deterministic, but you're still going to get a lot of precision though, because there is not going to be too many interruptions or whatever, so it's fine. On the Teensy, you don't have to worry about it because the only thing you're running is the audio. So there is probably very few interruptions happening in the background here, that are going to make the whole process less deterministic, so and if you have a computational error, it's going to be more in the order of nanosecond or something like this, that in microsecond, so you don't have to worry about it. Cool. Any questions about this? This should be pretty straightforward, it's as long as you manage to solder the Teensy properly, then this should just work, basically, right? So if you go on the course website, you go in labs, you go in lab 2. So lab 2 basically sort of re-explain everything that we just did, okay, with pictures, And so you just want to do this, okay? Then you want to make sound, we did that, okay. And so the assignment for next week, which is going to be due on January 26th, is to make a music box / sound generator based on this, right? And so the goal of the assignment is to make a music box or a sound generator using Faust and the Teensy Audio Shield. The idea is to make a system that will produce sound, and it could be tonal, atonal, whatever, you know, like, I mean, we're not very sectarian here, so if you want to play your favorite Beatles song, you can. If you want to play your favorite Pierre Boulez song, you can. One plug to a sound system or a computer / USB charger. You know, like, so the cool thing about these guys is that because they are very low power, you can actually, you don't even need to power them with USB. You know, like, you can literally just take an external battery, you know, like a 9-volt battery, and then do like some super basic circuitry, you know, and power the Teensy with it. You know, like, it would probably last for 4 hours or whatever. You know, like, so if you actually want to make a real music box with this, you could do it. Feel free to use any Faust code that you'll find on the web. Okay, the only requirement is that the produced sound, should it be musical or not, should constantly evolve. Okay, or loop in time. In other words, it should not be static. You want something that is generated and just like changing all the time. And if you decide to generate a tune, this might come handy. Okay, so this is basically the kind of stuff you want to do, like to sort of, you know, start a note, play the note, wait, and then stop the note, right? Just try that. Note how delays here in milliseconds are used to control the rhythm, okay? So this is kind of related to what you just mentioned. One more thing, controlling pitch with a frequency is not necessarily convenient because it's not linear, right? So you might want to use the MIDI key to Hertz function in Faust. Very convenient, you know, because then you just give it a MIDI number, which is basically a number between 0 and 127, and which corresponds to a note. Like every time you go up one integer, it's basically like going to the next semitone. Okay, so this is convenient. Needless to say that your music box sound generator should be artful and beautiful. You make a video, you send it to us, and then we're happy. Do you have any questions or? Yeah.
This is a physical thing?
No. Well, I mean, if you want to make it like a physical thing, you can. Like, if you want to like put your Teensy inside an actual box, you feel free to do it. You know, like, but no, like this is just the Teensy. Like this is just this playing sound. You know, like not more. So don't want to think about the, well, if you want to think about the hardware aspect of this, like you can. If you want to like create a metaphor or whatever, like some students did that in previous years, you know, like, but it's not a requirement, you know, like, so like the goal of this lab is to run Faust programs on the Teensy. Yeah, sorry.
So when you say evolving time, does it have to be different issues?
The what, sorry?
Like you said, like it is still evolving time, so does like the thing has to be different in each of those?
Not necessarily, like well, I mean, what we don't want is something that just like makes a static sound, you know, so like not something that's like, like as we did at the beginning of the class, you know, like, so as long as you get like different notes, even if they're looping, that's okay. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the best way to record all this? Specifically, how do we capture the audio?
That is a good question, actually. So that's a very good point. So I guess there are several options. One option, okay, we're gonna set up like speakers in the Max Lab so that you can just plug your Teensy to a speaker and then if you want to make your video, you just record the video with your smartphone, and playing from the speaker. There are speakers in the Max Lab already, and if you ask Mike or me, during office hours, how to plug your Teensy to the mics, to the speakers, which are in the Max Lab, then it's pretty straightforward. You can add extra speakers. If you want to do this the clean way, you want to use an external audio interface on your computer, which is more complicated, and we don't really have one for everyone to share. So maybe I feel like the speaker option is probably the best one. This is just a lab. Once we do final projects and we want to do proper documentation, then we'll definitely do things the right way with a proper recording. But this is just labs, right? Just plug the Teensy to a speaker, and we'll have everything ready in the Max Lab for that. So yeah. So I will have office hours tomorrow at 1. You on Monday at 1, right? You're definitely gonna have to use the Max Lab for this homework. So please come in. Feel free to use the Max Lab whenever at this point. It's open. There if you need help. So yeah. Other questions or? Yeah.
Related to this lab per se, but more than Faust. Are there ways to programmatically generate strings in Faust? If you're trying to generate programmatically UI elements here, does that work or not really?
Yeah. So
how do strings work in Faust? That's really my question.
I mean, there is no strings are not really built in Faust, right? Because Faust is only for audio signal processing. So in theory, you don't really need strings to do real-time audio signal processing. So strings work as part of the user interface elements that you get in Faust, but they're not really a built-in feature of the programming language itself, right?
Yeah. Right. So it seems that the exposed to control elements.
Yeah. So basically, the way we want to do this is, so you can create. Sorry, I need to think about this just for the example. So you can create an additive synthesizer, and that additive synthesizer is just gonna use say 3 oscillators in parallel.
Yeah.
And then they have a frequency, okay, and all these oscillators will be merged into one signal. Okay. So then you want to use the width environment, which basically allows you to create local variables to function. And then you want to say that f is basically going to take I as an argument. And then you're going to say H slider free n% I. Okay, right? And then default, minimum, maximum, step. Okay. And then here, just to prevent confusion, I'm going to call it J. And then what you do is that you have I here, okay? And then you pass I to F as the argument of F. Okay, and then we can call. And then if you run, there we go.
Yeah. Okay.
Break 0, 1, and 2.
So you can. I think that you can insert essentially integers into strings. Does that work for just floats as well?
Yep.
Okay. And then I guess the other thing is Are there ways to dynamically select elements from a list? Because like it seems like you can only do that at compile time. Like you can like select something from like a essentially like a list if you have like the index node at compile time.
Yeah.
Is there any way to do that dynamically or no?
Yeah. I mean, because what you're talking about is pattern matching. So like if you create a list the way you're talking about it here, it's not really a list per se.
Yes. Are lists even real?
It's just that like pattern matching is an algorithmic construction, right? So it's a little bit like if you would do like recursion in C++, like where like you call a function within the function, and that allows you to sort of build an algorithm programmatically. So that's what pattern matching does in Faust. So it's not like creating like an array where you have elements that you can choose like in the array. This is like a programmatic way of doing things. So instead, do what you're.
Like even something like for me, like I have like my project had like 4 different kind of going like generators.
Yeah.
Like sawtooth, square, triangle, and such. And like it would be nice if you could just like I guess what's the easiest way to just call a function on those 4 different objects? You just like specify those 4 different objects without having to like actually just write it. I don't know if I'm making sense. Like instead of calling function sawtooth, then function square, like if you could just say for each of these 4 oscillators, call this function. That was like something I was trying to do.
Yeah, I'm not sure. So I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but like you could say. Like you could create like a ask function, and then you could say that ask0 is equal to os.osc 440 hertz. And then you could say that osc1, so that's pattern matching. And then you could do like os.sawtooth.
Well, actually,
440. Okay.
yeah.
And then what you do is so like here if I set this to 2 and here I call OSC and pass it I as an argument.
Yeah.
Right? So like that's a way to sort of create an array of objects, right? And then here you're calling the object using I. But the thing is, this is pattern matching. So pattern matching only works at compile time. So this is not something which is dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So
Like you can't change like ask2 to point to os.sawtooth to the program.
no, for that you need to do something else. Like for that, like you can still use this, but then for example, there are many ways to do it, but one way to do it is to use select2. And then select2 is going to take only one argument, which is going to be the selector. Then you could declare it here, okay? And so basically, now when you call additive, if you say 0 here, then this is just like a switch.
Yeah.
And so here, what we do is that we say, okay, I'm taking this. And then you can say 1, then you're taking this. And this can be dynamic. Like, so
I guess like you would just I'm trying to think of how these are like all audio signals, right? So you just implement select2, takes in 3 parameters, like the switch and then the 2 different inputs. And then you just like multiply the first input by S and then
absolutely, that's
input
another
by
thing, and you don't have to worry about this because like Faust will optimize things in the background so that things don't get run if they don't have to. Like if you multiply something by 0, Faust will stop computing.
Wait, we'll select to actually we'll select to compute.
No, so select will only compute the block that is being used.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't know that.
And it's the same for like what you were describing. So oh yeah. So another way of doing what you're of what we're doing here is you could instead of using select2, you could have OSC. So you have your OSC here, and then you do multiply by I equals S equal I, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You know, like, so this is a condition,
Yeah.
right? And so this gives you 1 if it's true, 0 if it's false, and then you multiply the result of this with your thing. And so that's another way of doing the select.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. That's
And then like
dynamic.
Faust is smart enough to not compute something that is multiplied by 0.
Oh, so
Yeah.
will it compute the right? It'll compute S equals I first before computing. Like, will it decide that
Yeah.
that S equals I is easier to compute than OSCI, and then do that for, like, will it recognize that multiplication is commutative, and it'll do that
Yeah.
with operations. That's smarter than perhaps we even needed to be.
So yeah, that's it's kind of the.
So that's kind of how you do conditions or switch statements.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so in in functional programming languages, usually it depends on the functional programming language, but usually you don't have like if statements, or you don't have like you don't have an if statement. So that's your if statement, right? Like that's the condition of your if statement, and then that's the result of your if statement.
Yeah.
And in the end, it's doing the same, right? Like so.
Writing a compiler to deal with that case must have
Yeah.
Could you implement a counter anyway?
Yeah.
Just going back to the next slide.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, thank you. A counter. So well, there are counters in the libraries. So like you can use like counters in the libraries, but if you want to implement one, basically what you do is that you say plus tilde.
Because I thought you can't
Sorry.
like reassign the variables, right? Like them, unless you create a new variable.
Yeah. So, but that's not how you, like, once again, you're like, Faust is a functional programming language. So it's just like a completely different paradigm than like other languages, you know. And so you can do it. It's just that you don't do it the same way in a functional programming language than you would do it like in a imperative programming language. So the way you do it is that you say, okay, I have a signal, and I create a recursive signal to which I will add 1 every time. So basically, that's a counter, right?
Oh.
Because basically, like the tilde is your recursive signal, okay? And so basically, yeah, like this is a loop, right? And so you add 1 to the loop every time, right? So this is a counter, like going counting from 1 up to the infinity. Okay. Yeah.